Okay, folks, how you guys doing? My name is Mark. This is Why I Hate the World. What's happening? And we are starting on time today. Hopefully some people saw this because I didn't really get a chance to schedule the stream beforehand. But that's okay. So, welcome, everyone. Thank you all so much. Today is April 17th, Saturday. And let's jump right into it. So before we get going, I think I need to adjust the focus just a little bit on this because it's looking a little fuzzy to me. Anyway, so this is what we were working on last week. There we go. That looks better. All right. Which is kind of like a weird going for sort of a fishman kind of thing. You know, if you ever read H.P. Lovecraft, he has these sort of half man, half fish people called the Deep Ones. That's what I was trying to go for here. I don't know. It doesn't really kind of look very fish-like to me, but, you know, whatever. Let's continue anyway. I still kind of like how it sort of looks. It looks a little... I think one of the guys in the stream last week said it looks sort of like Abe from, you know, Oddworld. Which, if you've never played Oddworld, it's like a very interesting series of games. You know, it's got really good visuals and a very rich backstory. Kind of frustrating gameplay, though. But anyway, maybe I'll cover that one day on my other YouTube channel, my UCD Videos channel. So, this week, Qannon is back in the news. Kind of hoping they would be over with. Weren't you? I don't know, I sort of was. You know, since the election was over and Donald Trump clearly lost, and, you know, the Capitol 6 insurrection, right? And all of the failed predictions and things where they predicted that Trump would, you know, somehow still be the president, and after all that didn't come true. You'd think that, you know, people would start kind of leaving QAnon. You know, people would start kind of putting two and two together and realizing that it's all bullshit. And it doesn't really seem to be that way. I am seeing some things of some reports, you know, some news stories about, yeah, maybe some people are getting a little disillusioned, but really, you know, interest in the QAnon conspiracy theory has really not waned that much, apparently. And it's really because it is, at this point, sort of become a religion. Right? It's evolved past just a normal conspiracy theory, and it's become, you know, it's essentially a cult in the making. And I really think that people, you know, a few hundred years from now, are going to look back at this period and are going to look at QAnon the same way that we look at, you know, weird religious cults from 500 years ago. You know what I mean? And they're going to see, like, it's going to be a fascinating thing for, like, you know, sociologists and things to, and people like that to study, you know, religious scholars and that kind of thing. The same way that we look at cargo cults right now, you know, like we can, you know, if any of you guys don't know what cargo cults are, they're actually kind of fascinating in and of themselves. But they were these cults that were started on, actually, well, one real famous one was started on this island in the Pacific, you know, South Pacific, after American soldiers left. And they came back after World War II, you know, and they came back a few years later and they found that these islanders had created like this very bizarre religion based around their brief occupation of the island. So the islanders created, you know, an airstrip out of like wood and you know, with towers, and then they'd have a guy sitting in the tower with coconuts on his head, you know, that were cut and made to look like headphones, right? And it was sort of like they were, you know, they were imitating the things that they saw the soldiers do, and they even went so far as to create like a wooden sort of you know, a wooden sort of model of an airplane that was only like, you know, 10 feet long or something like that, right? all made out of wood and palm leaves and shit like that. And it was like it became this religion, you know. Well, I really think that people like 100 years from now, people are going to be studying QAnon in that same sort of light, in the same sort of way, and they're going to be like, look how this stuff developed, and they're going to be pointing to YouTube videos and posts on 4chan and shit like that, because 100 years from now, it's going to be this bona fide religion with like churches and it's going to have tax exempt status, and there's going to be people like on fucking TV preaching this shit. Just watch. Right, that's what's going to happen. So anyway, QAnon is in the news now because of there was a filmmaker named Colin Hoback, and he believes that he has discovered the identity of Q. At least one of the people who may have posted as Q. And this is someone that there's been suspicions for a while now that this guy might have been Q. His name is Ron Watkins, right? And what it was is that there is a 6-hour documentary on QAnon on HBO called Q Into the Storm, right? That was played on HBO here. I haven't watched it because I do not have HBO, but one of these days I'll probably get around to watching this when it shows up on other platforms. I'm sure eventually somebody's going to leak this online, or I'll be able to get it on Netflix or something. And so who is Ron Watkins? Well, anyway, so what basically happened is that they were interviewing this guy, and then he seemingly admitted that he was Q kind of by accident. So here is a let me go ahead and turn this on here. Turn on my right monitor. There we go. Here is an article on Mashable, and I'll put this in the chat for you guys if you want to check this out later. And I really like the title of this article. Ron Watkins seems to admit he's Q in the dumbest possible ending to QAnon. that just made me chuckle. That's just funny. And anyway, basically this is the guy Ron Watkins, right? Who is this guy? Well, he was a system admin for 8chan, right? And basically here is a video. I'm gonna go ahead and play this because this is actually from Twitter, so I can play this because that means that this dude, this dude put it himself. So can I make this bigger? Yeah. All right. Let's pause that and let's make sure my audio is good. So here is the big finale where Ron Watkins accidentally outs himself as Q.
Something shocking. Ron hadn't just been participating in Q research. It sounded like he was leading it.
Yeah, so thinking back on it, it was basically 3 years of intelligence training, teaching normies how to do intelligence work. It's basically what I was doing anonymously before, but never as Q.
See that smile? Ron had slipped up. He knew it, and I knew it. And after 3 tireless years of cat and mouse, well...
Never as Q, I promise.
Never as Q. Okay.
Because I am not cute. It never was.
Oh, man.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so anyway, let's turn that off. That is Ron Watkins accidentally admitting that he's Q and then denying immediately afterward, even though he had a big ass smile on his face because he's obviously fucking Q. Right? So, yeah, so who is Ron Watkins? Well, he is a sysadmin for 8chan, right? So a little bit of history of all of this shit here. Q started out on 4chan. In fact, I made a stream about this a little while ago, maybe about last month, I think, or maybe the month before. We kind of went into the origins, and I showed the very first, tweet from QAnon, like, and it had to do with like Hillary Clinton, you know, claiming that Hillary Clinton was going to be arrested and blah blah blah, and that there was going to be some riots in the streets, and then ask, you know, the military was going to clamp down, and ask anybody you know who's part of the National Guard, they're on, you know, deployment, all this other shit, stuff that didn't happen, right? That's what you know, the very first, you know, and that's worth noting, right? At the very first QAnon Q drop, the very first Q post was a failed prediction. You think it would have died? You think it would have like died after that, right? Like any rational adult would have seen that and be like, okay, this guy's full of shit, and just not paid attention to anything else that he said. But that's not what happened. So anyway, started on 4chan, right? And it was very much just normal conspiracy theory bullshit, you know, stuff like what I was saying there, you know, and it kind of picked up steam, you know, and people started getting into it and spreading it around and blah, blah, blah. And then it moved to 8chan, right? Which is with this guy, Ron Watkins, and his father, who was named Jim Watkins. They owned 8chan, right? And then after Q moves to 8chan, and then later it was also called 8kun because 8chan got shut down for a little while. Got shut down for a little while because too many white supremacists were posting their fucking manifestos there. And then one guy even like live streamed himself. I think it was the Christchurch shooting in New Zealand. That guy that went into a mosque and, like, you know, shot up like a whole bunch of people and murdered them, like live streamed it to fucking 8chan. Right? So that's why 8chan got basically, you know, blocked, because 8chan does not have any moderation. You know, they would only moderate the absolute minimum, which meant child porn. That was it. CP, that's all that they would moderate, you know. And anything else, I mean, if there was something that was illegal, it would get removed, and anything else they would leave. So just like every place on the internet that does not have sufficient moderation, it gets overrun by white supremacists and Nazis and shit like that. And that's just what fucking happens, you know. And that even still happens today. You know, it's funny. A little side note here. I have a video I made. A video I made a few years ago about the 56% face, and that is my most famous video. That video consistently gets more views than anything else I've ever made, and I always wondered why. And it's all white supremacists coming on there and making fun of me, right? In this video, it's like, yeah, fine, whatever, I don't care. And I found out it's because somebody linked it to a well, the current, you know, reason why it's getting traffic, right? I mean, I don't know if this is the only reason, but the current reason why it's getting traffic is because somebody linked it to a server for Club Penguin, right? And if you don't know what Club Penguin is, it was sort of like an online game owned by Disney for a little while about penguins, and you could do penguin shit with them and go down ice slides and crap like that. And the game has, you know, been shut down, right? You know, it was sort of like a Gaia Online kind of thing. You know what I mean? People go on, and it's like a social media thing with like video games and forums and stuff, blah, blah, blah. And it got shut down because, you know, stuff like that doesn't last forever. And then a bunch of people kind of created their own, like they got the source code, and now they're hosting the game themselves. So there's these unofficial Club Penguin websites all over the place. And since they're not officially run by Disney, they have very lax moderation. And even places like these, so then the guy comes on and says, yeah, somebody linked to you in this Club Penguin site, and it's like overrun with fucking Nazis. Like, I go there, and it's just all alt-right people and Nazis and incels and like fucking nutbag conspiracy theorists and QAnon folks and all of that. And it just kind of goes to show, even like a website about fucking cartoon penguins that, you know, play little flash games or whatever. Well, I guess it's like HTML5 now, but, you know, or whatnot. Even a website like that gets overrun by these alt-right assholes, you know, when there's no moderation. And it's just like, goddamn, like, it's fucking so ridiculous. Anyway, that's kind of off the subject. So Yeah, so 8chan and later 8kun kind of became a hotbed, right, for QAnon stuff. That's where all the Q drops would get made. That's what they call it. They call them Q drops when Q would post some random, stupid, unprovable bullshit that never came true, and people would sort of glom all over it, and spread it around. And it got really popular there, and it became sort of like this cottage industry, where all of these QAnon influencers would retweet all the shit. They'd repost it, and all of these like YouTube channels popped up, people on Instagram, and they, people building their careers and shit, like making money, building their careers all around these random fucking postings from like someone that nobody even knew who the hell they were, right? That were like repeatedly, and consistently posted untrue, unprovable bullshit, conspiracy theories, predictions that never came true ever, stuff like that. And it became this sort of culture, it was like this fucking phenomenon, I guess. You know what I mean? Like this meme out of control, a meme in real life that's just out of control. And I think a lot of it had to do really with first off the grifting aspect, right? A lot of people were making money off of Q. People selling shirts, selling fucking selling books. People are writing books about Q. People are making YouTube videos that get ad revenue with Q, right? People selling stickers, shit like that, right? So that's a big, and that can never really be understated. The capacity for conservatives to fucking rip each other off is really, I think, can really not be understated ever. That's the main reason why you have conservative media, is so that they can sell shit to each other, right? So that the guy, whoever's like blabbing into the microphone and shit gets his cut. That's what all conservative media is all about. It's all about that money, man. All about that skrillage, getting them those dollars there, right? So that was a big part of it, but I also think a large part of it comes from kind of like whenever conservatives get insulted, you ever notice that they own it? They always turn whenever you try to shame a conservative for whatever reason, they always embrace that thing and it becomes a badge of honor, like Hillary Clinton's deplorables. She calls, like half of them are deplorable. And these people take that, and before you know it, people are wearing t-shirts that say "I'm deplorable" on it, and they're owning it, and it becomes this badge of honor. People. Another example of this: Chick-fil-A. The guy that runs it says some anti-gay remarks, and not only do people like purposely eat at Chick-fil-A, but then they spread it around on social media and stuff, proud to be eating a chicken sandwich and shit in order to pwn the liberals or whatever. And it's very much and it's kind of a defense mechanism in one hand. That's something you do when you don't have an ability to argue the facts with somebody, right? Somebody comes to you and defeats you in an argument, you double down. Okay? You double down, you say, I don't care what you say, blah, blah, blah. And even though if you know that somehow on the inside you know that you're probably wrong, and if you took the time to like look it up, the other guy might have a point. But most people will not, and faced in a situation like that, most people will not concede defeat. It becomes a point of pride, and it's like they don't care how wrong it is. They'll blissfully ignore the truth, right? And that seems to be a thing that conservatives are really, really good at. That kind of denying reality when it comes to things they're just when they're when it comes to them losing arguments, when it comes to them having beliefs which are demonstrably untrue. And you see this all the time, how they deny science, they deny evolution, they deny, they're against mask mandates, things like that. the anti-vax movement is very, very much on the conservative side. They spread bullshit about abortion and saying that abortion gives you cancer and windmills give you cancer, and they're against like they deny the facts about global climate change, shit like that. And they kind of a lot of them. I don't want to say they because I'm generalizing, but a lot of conservatives will take stuff like that and they'll kind of consider it like a badge of honor. Proud to be a fucking science denier. I'm proud to and they'll make they'll spread it around and they'll make bumper stickers and shit and it'll become a thing and you don't believe in the fake news media, blah blah blah, right? And that's also a big part of how stuff like QAnon gets spread around, right? They see some completely Q makes some like demonstrably untrue statements about predictions that don't happen, and it becomes sort of like an article of faith, and also an article of pride to know that you believe in this stuff. And it's the same kind of thing that you get from religious believers, very much so, very much the same, in that same neighborhood of that kind of blind religious faith, you know what I mean? So anyway, getting back on track here. Anyway, so it moves to, QAnon moves to 8chan, or 8kun later. And people notice that Q's writing style changes once this happens, right? And whereas before Q, on 4chan, Q was much more technical, had a very sort of cut and dry technical writing style, kind of like how you would think an intelligence agent would write, or a cop. That's what it kind of sounds like when you read the early Q drops, right? It kind of sounds like a cop making a report, very dry, very just the facts, ma'am, kind of thing. And it reminds me, they remind me a lot of like, if you've ever seen Oliver Stone's JFK movie, right? There's that part where Mr. X comes out and, fucking, what's his name is there, they're in the park and, the guy's talking to him and explaining all of this shit about like, coups in South America and stuff like that and how they like got shooters in to kill Kennedy, that kind of thing, and it was, what's his name? Fucking, not Michael Duck. No, it was, I can't remember the actor's name. But I'm sure you know that scene that I'm talking about, right? It's like that. It's like whoever wrote the Q drops in the beginning was trying to be that guy, trying to be sort of a deep throat whistleblower kind of, like it's the X-Files or some shit. Right. Then after Q moves to 8kun, he becomes more of a shit poster at that point. And there's still Q drops and stuff like that. Starts posting a lot more ridiculous, stupid conspiracy theories, starts posting memes, shit like that. And so it was like an obvious change, right? The thing is that there's this sort of code that you can use to on 4chan and on 8kun and stuff, because these sites are set up in such a way that they can keep their anonymity on these sites. And in order to prove that you're the same person posting over and over, you have to put in this password and get this code, right? So that's why everybody thought that, well, Q is this is the same guy, because obviously he has to have this password in order to be able to log in and post his Q, right? Well, who else has that password but the system admin of the website, right? And so, this guy fucking Ron Watkins, I mean, he had the ability to post as Q. He had all of the dude's passwords, things like that. And, and it just so happens there are other clues involved in this as well. So, for example, one thing that he did, Q supposedly did to prove that it was still him, is that he posted this picture of this notebook and pen, right? Saying, and it was like the same picture that he posted on 4chan back in the day, right? And it was sort of like, see, this is really me. Here's my notebook, here's my pen, so that you know it's me, right? And it just so happens that the pen that he posted was this really expensive, like $1,500 pen, right? Like one of these like really expensive collector pens. And so everybody's like, oh, you know, this is how we know it's him. It's like this super expensive pen because, you know, not everybody, you know, it's not just some pen that he got from fucking Rite Aid or something. Right, so this must be him, you know. Well, it just so happens that Ron Watkins' father, Jim Watkins, happens to be a pen collector. Right? And not only is he a guy that collects pens, but you know, he's also a multimillionaire, right? So it's like he can afford the super expensive fucking pens. I mean, just a coincidence, you think? Like, gee, I mean, just I don't know. It's just very, you know, just another clue supporting the idea that this whole thing was a fucking farce to begin with. All right. So now, why would you say that? Hey, Dynacat, how you doing? Um, no, you know who it was? It was the one I'm talking about. The guy I'm talking about in JFK was Donald Sutherland. That's who it was. You know, so if you remember that part where Donald Sutherland is there and they're in the park and they're on that bench and he's talking about all this like intelligence shit. You know, that's who it is, and that's what QAnon was like trying to, like, the early Q drops were written in that style. Like it was like an intelligence agent dropping, like, you know, classified information and stuff. And then once it goes to fucking like 8kun and 8chan, it becomes like this like conspiracy theory shit poster thing, you know, posting fucking memes and stuff. It was funny. Anyway, so you know, so people kind of wonder, it's like, you know, what motive would you have if to fake this kind of thing, right? Well, there's lots of different motives. I mean, the first one would be obviously to get traffic to come to your website. You know, if you're the guy that owns the website, right, and you know that this QAnon shit brings millions and millions of people there, then, you know, kind of sounds like a good reason to keep it going, right? And here's the thing: it's like, was this guy Watkins there? You know, in the beginning, was he Q? They don't know, right? It kind of looks like he wasn't the guy that started it. It looks like he just sort of took over the persona, and there were at least a couple of people at one point just looking at the language that was used and the way they write, you know, the writing patterns and stuff. There were at least a couple of people who posted as QAnon, so he's not the only one. But it's starting to look like that he definitely was the guy that posted as Q on 8kun. And you think, you know, but here's the thing, right? You don't really have to have a motive, you know. I mean, it's like, okay, yeah, maybe his motive was to make money or something like that, right? But, you know, another motive is just to fuck with people, right? Just to fucking, because why not? Right? You know, I mean, that's the thing, is it's power, right? You have power over these people's lives, even if it's just something as stupid as like some shit you wrote on a website. I mean, imagine that. Imagine you write some shit and then you turn around and you see the thing that you wrote get spread around the entire internet, and people are making fucking videos about it and people are debating it, stuff like that. And then you're seeing politicians and shit like start to like repeat the shit that you said. You know, I mean, imagine just that sort of the power trip that comes with that. That'd be fucking amazing. I'd be laughing my ass off every fucking night, and I'd keep it going forever, because, you know, it's sort of like the biggest joke in the world, except he's the only guy that is laughing at it. That's the thing, you know. I mean, and there's lots of other reasons too. It's like, yeah, QAnon also got people to support Donald Trump a lot. So if he was an obvious, you know, if you're a conservative, if you're a Trump supporter, you could even look at it in that sort of way. It's like, yeah, you know, I'm doing my part to get this guy elected. You know, even though the way I'm doing it is by lying and spreading like bullshit and conspiracy theories, fuck it, who cares, you know? Right? That's another motive too, right? I mean, there's lots of other theories, though, that, you know, QAnon is really Russian trolls and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, I bet you one day some of that's going to bear fruit, too. You know, it sounds to me like it sounds to me like, say for example, the Russian troll farms would be negligent in their duties if they didn't take advantage of QAnon in some fashion, whether that was dropping some of them themselves in the beginning or at least spreading it around. I bet we'll find, we'll find proof one day that the Russian operations probably spread around QAnon conspiracy theories a lot, but I'm pretty sure, I'm like, I'd bet my freaking left kidney on that. Right. So, but anyway, but there could have been a lot of different motives. It doesn't really matter what the motive is. It just sort of, but it's definitely looking pretty, I don't know, I would give it like a 90% chance that this guy was actually Q. Right. So, let's talk a little bit about the Q core beliefs. What'd you say, Danacat? Well, lying and spreading bullshit was the only way to get Trump elected after all. Yeah, ain't that the truth? So let's look a little bit at the QAnon beliefs, because I wanted to, talk about, like, how could people believe this shit, and what actually is it that they believe, right? And really, QAnon, if you look at it, it essentially is just a rebranding of white supremacist, like, conspiracy theories, Nazi conspiracy theories, right? Essentially, it's basically the exact same fucking thing that, you would see on, like, white supremacist websites like Stormfront and shit. Just sort of rebranded and slightly sanitized in order to make them more palatable for middle class, white America, soccer moms and shit, right? It's just sort of rebranded a little bit so that the normies will spread it around, right? So let's see. The biggest core belief of QAnon is, of course, the sex trafficking stuff. The idea that there's a massively gigantic sex trafficking ring, worldwide sex trafficking ring, and all of the elites in the world are in on it, right? And these are the same people that run everything. So all of the major world's politicians and business owners, CEOs, executives, things like that, media figures, and especially bankers and financiers are all part of this cabal that secretly run everything and are responsible for everything that happens ever in the entire world, up to and including random acts of just things like, not just every, like, war or, political event, every election, every time somebody gets arrested, whatever, right? They're behind all that shit, but they're also behind things like, natural disasters, the Fukushima earthquake, or the fires in the western United States, in California and Oregon and Washington, stuff like that keep happening every fucking year. They're behind all that too. They shoot them with space lasers, like Marjorie Taylor Greene says. They're behind volcanoes and stuff erupting, and they're behind mass shootings. They're just basically, they just run everything that ever happens ever on the history of Earth is because these people want it to happen for one reason or another, which those reasons are never really actually made very clear, That's one thing that's very common with conspiracy theorists, this idea that there are, you'll hear this a lot, that there are no coincidences, right? We'll talk a little bit about that later, but it's basically because they, they can't accept the fact that bad shit happens to good people, and that very much is a thing that religious people, that's kind of a cognitive bias that religious people often fall into. But we'll talk about that at the end. So they control, all the governments, corporations, the media, everything, right? And they kidnap these children to use them in satanic rituals. So this kind of fits in a little bit with what we were talking about last week with the satanic ritual abuse. You know, that has kind of been adopted by QAnon. It's back. You know, the satanic panic of the 80s is back as QAnon. So that's why, they're trafficking children so that they can torture them and rape them and kill them and ultimately eat them. You know, there's a thing called spirit cooking that Alex Jones often talks about, that they've accused Hillary Clinton and what's her name, Huba Abedin, of doing, spirit cooking, where they're like drinking the blood of children, shit like that. And also a big thing that happened, a big part of this conspiracy theory is harvesting adrenochrome. We kind of talked about that a little bit in a few streams back, but quick recap, adrenochrome is the substance that you get from the pineal gland of, a supposedly dead, recently deceased corpse. Has to be someone who was just alive, because if you take it off someone who's been dead for too long, it doesn't work. Adrenochrome is, of course, bullshit. It does not actually get you high. It doesn't do anything, right? The idea is that they're taking it to, as part of a ritual, and then also it's supposed to keep them young for some reason. Adrenochrome does not keep people young. It just gives you a headache. It's not like, this was popularized in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, where Hunter S. Thompson drinks a few vials of this stuff and has the craziest acid trip of his entire life. But in real life, he just made that shit up. It doesn't actually do that. You don't get, it's not a drug that actually does anything to you. It just gives you a headache. You don't get visions and shit. You can't commune with Satan when you take it. You don't fucking live forever. It's a fabrication. It's bullshit. Anyway, but that's a big belief now, and you'll get, thousands of people and stuff commenting about all this stuff and how they're fucking raping kids and stealing their brain juice and stuff. Anyway. And, so all this is bad, these evil secret cabal of crazy, crazy Satan-worshipping fucking pedophiles, pedophile cannibals. Sounds horrible, right? And the only person that can save us from all this, according to QAnon, is Donald Trump. The only person in the world who stands against the cabal of all-powerful, Satan-worshipping, pedophile cannibals is a failed real estate mogul turned, reality TV show host who has 5 children with 3 different wives and is being sued by everybody and their grandma. And, that's our fucking hero, Donald Trump. Right? It couldn't be more ridiculous if you tried. It's just think about that for a second. Donald Trump is the guy that's going to save the world from the Satan-worshipping pedophiles, right? Who live forever, by the way. Keep that in mind. They live forever. The adrenochrome keep them young. So how old is Hillary Clinton supposed to be? What, 100 years, 200 years old? All right. I mean, the more you think about it, the more ridiculous it is. But, if these people thought about this shit, they wouldn't be conspiracy theorists. Anyway. And, so Donald Trump was the only one, and throughout the Trump presidency, there were all of these hidden clues about how he was fighting these guys behind the scenes, right? How he was using the military and stuff like that and going out and arresting a bunch of these people and, arresting Hillary Clinton and Tom Hanks for some reason. I don't know why Tom Hanks got dragged into this conspiracy theory, but apparently he's one of the big bad guys, is fucking Tom Hanks for some reason. It's weird as fuck. And every time a celebrity would die, Michael Jackson would die or something like that, they were actually not really dead. They were just, they just faked their own death, and they were really captured by Trump and the military. and secretly put on trial and are in prison or have been hanged or something. And any day now, when Donald Trump gets around to it, he's going to enact what's called the storm, right? And the storm was when he was going to get the military and go round up all the pedophiles and Satan worshipers and Democrats, right? And they were going to go, and he was going to give them all public military tribunals and then public executions, and finally Satan will be stopped, and then Jesus can come back and I don't know, ban abortion or whatever. Right? So that was the storm. So, and this is stuff we've kind of touched on in the past. The storm came from that term, the storm, came from a comment that Donald Trump made, an offhand remark that he made. I actually showed this in one of my prior streams, where he was standing with a bunch of generals and shit like that, and they were at some kind of luncheon, and they're all doing a photo op, and then Donald Trump just, Donald Trump does not like uncomfortable silences, apparently, and just started blabbing, and he said, "You know what this represents?" And everybody was like, "What?" And he goes, "The calm before the storm." And then everybody was like, "What does this mean? What does the calm before the storm mean?" And he goes, "You'll find out." And, of course, it was nothing. It was nothing. It was Donald Trump bullshitting, because, he saw cameras on and shit and said, "Hey, I should fucking say something," because you got to keep them ratings up and stuff. So that's really where this fucking storm came from. It was literally just some shit Donald Trump said to fill airtime. And these people took it and turned it into this major fucking, religious movement. Anyway. Such a fucking joke. So yeah, this is, not all, of course, of what QAnon believes, because they've sort of folded in pretty much every major conspiracy theory that you can think of has been folded into QAnon. Let's see, I wrote some of these down. One of them was at the Robert Mueller investigation. When Mueller was investigating Donald Trump's Trump and his team, all of his campaign and stuff, and how they just seem to have so many connections with Russian nationals. I mean, there was just seemed to be just a coincidence that so many people on his campaign keep having secret contacts with fucking people from Russia. And it's like, well, why? And sometimes some of that shit was illegal, and a few people actually went to jail for that, And really, but that wasn't really an investigation into Donald Trump, according to QAnon. What it really was cover, so that Donald Trump was working with Robert Mueller in order to expose the cabal. That was their plan. So they were actually working together to get evidence, right? So that way they could arrest Hillary Clinton and and Bill Clinton and Barack Obama and Joe Biden and everybody else who said bad things about Donald Trump. That was really funny shit. And that was their reaction to Donald Trump getting impeached the first time, just to completely deny it and say the opposite of what actual verifiable reality was telling them, because that's what religious people do when you confront them with things that go against their worldview. They double down and they insist that the opposite is true. Another one, Kim Jong-un was actually a puppet dictator installed by the CIA. I don't know how that fucking works, but I guess we have nothing to worry about from North Korea then, if we're actually secretly, controlling them or whatever. I don't know. Another conspiracy theory pushed by QAnon was that Debbie Wasserman Schultz, you remember her, she apparently hired MS-13 in order to kill Seth Rich. So, this was a big thing back during the first election in 2016. This DNC staffer gets murdered, right? And it becomes this major fucking conspiracy theory. If you guys remember Seth Rich, And it turns out that, Seth Rich, it was like most likely he just got held up for his wallet or something like that. And then he got killed because, lo and behold, Washington, D.C. has the highest per capita murder rate in the entire country. Right. Lewis the Hedgehog, hey, thanks for joining, man. Yeah, that's kind of strange, right? The place where all of our politicians and leaders of the country and stuff congregate and make laws and that kind of thing. Not a very safe place to be walking around at night. So, I guess that's kind of what happens when you live in a place that actually isn't a state, right? And doesn't have representation. You tend to, the quality of life there, kind of goes down a little bit. So, anyway, yeah, that's kind of funny shit. Just crime like that, and like especially mass shootings in general. QAnon often blames on the cabal, especially mass shootings. They really don't like mass shootings, and every time there's a mass shooting, you get some QAnon asshole claiming it's because the cabal, the elites are doing it because they want to spread, they want to spread sentiment like anti-gun sentiment. They want to disarm the populace, and so they have they're staging all of these false flags in order to get people to want to take their guns away voluntarily, which is total 100% grade A bullshit. Right. This is a thing that you just see from just gun people in general. That you always get, like, it's like, oh, the fucking commies want to take away your guns or whatever. It's complete bullshit. But, this is something that you consistently get from the QAnon people. I think my favorite conspiracy to come out of QAnon has to be the Wayfair advertising conspiracy, the human trafficking conspiracy from Wayfair. So, that's Wayfair's a website where you can buy furniture. And what it was is that they had some really expensive furniture, and they were described with like women's names, right? So it would be this like, it would be this like cabinet, and the cabinet would be like, $20,000, and it would say Claire, or whatever, right? And it turned out that these were just placeholders, like basically it was a placeholder thing that they would fill in later. They would put in the proper name later and then put in the proper amount, and these things shouldn't have been in the production environment anyway, according to Wayfair. That kind of thing happens all the time if you ever, if you develop software, and I can kind of speak to this because that's sort of what I do for a living, like my day job and shit, right? You put up sometimes things that when it goes live, they call that production, right? And, sometimes things go up to production that aren't supposed to go up, like by accident, whether it's included in some release that the QA people didn't see or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And that's kind of what happened here. These placeholder things, that had incorrect prices and incorrect descriptions were put up, and somebody found them, and created this massive conspiracy theory saying that, oh, they're not really selling cabinets here, they're really selling children. And it's like, that I think was the most ridiculous fucking thing ever. I mean, it's like, what, can I just buy it? Like, if I buy the Claire cabinet, are they going to send a kid named Claire to me inside the cabinet? Is that how it works? It's just so ridiculous just to even think, just to kind of consider what would have to be true in order for this thing, what would have to be real in order for this shit to be true. Like, and I don't understand it. I don't understand how somebody can read some shit like that and then just believe it immediately. But I guess it's the same, you have to have that same capacity of like someone who thinks that the flood myth from Noah's Ark is real. I guess if you can believe that 100-year-old man can fit 2 of every fucking animal on Earth into a 100-foot boat and survive for 40 days without food or water, right? I guess if you can believe that, then you'll fucking believe that that you can buy a child sex slave through a website shipped to you inside of a cabinet. It's like the stupidest fucking shit. Seriously, people believe the dumbest fucking shit. Anyway, so that shit was funny. Let's see. That Wayfair thing was funny how that spread around like incredibly fast. Let's just take a minute to talk about that. It was somebody posted that, like, it came from a QAnon influencer, I guess, right? And her name was Amazing Polly, right? And it was somebody that on Twitter and made YouTube videos or whatever posts this thing about the Wayfair conspiracy, and within like 72 hours, it just fucking took off, and it was everywhere, all over the place. Like hundreds of thousands of people retweeted this stuff and spread it around like crazy. And by Monday, it was like people were talking about it on like Fox News, right? That's how fast this shit gets around. It's just one person says something, and it's like all it takes is somebody that has a few thousand followers. I think Amazing Polly had something like not even that many. I mean, she had like less than 100,000 followers on Twitter or something like that at the time, and it just like took off like fucking crazy. I guess when they talk about shit going viral, they're not kidding, right? And before you knew it, there were like celebrities retweeting this shit, in like 3 days later. And it's just fun. And here's the thing, right? Immediately, speaking of the Wayfair conspiracy, right? Immediately it was debunked. It wasn't just like something that, sat around and has been in the public consciousness for like years and years and years. Within like the same fucking day that it gets famous, that it starts trending, you see people in the news and stuff, and like on God, what the fuck is the name of that Scopes or whatever, I can't remember. You see people debunking this shit like right off the fucking bat, because it's the dumbest shit ever, and it's something that's incredibly easy to disprove, but to this day there's still people that believe it, right? Because it's sort of like when you get conspiracy theories like this, it doesn't matter if it's true. What matters is how fast does it spread, right? There are people today that even believe that the fucking moon landing wasn't real, right? This is like the most easily debunked thing ever. There's artifacts on the moon that you can they put mirrors there, and they bounce lasers off of the mirrors so that they can measure how far away the moon is. And you can do this today. You can you can see this data, right? You can get telescopes and point them at the moon and see the fucking artifacts on the moon, right? You can see the lunar lander module and shit, the base part. It's there. Okay, this is like, you can prove this, and there are still people that think that it's all a conspiracy, and that the data that you get is fake, and all those pictures are fake, and the hours and hours of footage that they have of them running around on the moon driving the little car and shit, all of it's fake, and it was all made by in a studio in 1969, and even to this day, right? So that's the thing. It's like even to this day, there's still people that think that children were being sold inside of fucking overpriced cabinets, because it doesn't matter. That's the thing. You got to remember, when it comes to conspiracy theories, the truth does not matter, right? It doesn't. And it's the same sort of way that if you ever try to debate a religious person, you ever try to debate whether evolution is or creationism versus evolution with a Christian, or even a Muslim or somebody like that, just any kind of super fundamentalist religious guy who denies evolution. You ever try to debate that? It's basically, you just give up. You're not going to win. It's like beating a dead horse. It's like fucking slamming your head against a brick wall, because they will not listen. They will not listen because it's an article of faith for them. And when logic fights faith, faith wins every time, because it doesn't have to be true, right, for these people to believe it. In fact, it's the idea that it can't be proven is what makes them believe it. That's why you have faith. You have faith in shit that that cannot be proved, right? And it's the same shit. They've just applied the same. This is why you always see preachers and stuff talking about QAnon. Religious leaders and preachers and all these other people, and how people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, they're always talking about, with the glory of God, whatever, blah blah blah. They're highly religious people. they've just folded this QAnon shit into their religion. It's like this is fucking, you know, the next gospel or whatever. Right? It's essentially become part of Christianity in, well, in the United States at least. Apparently, QAnon is actually sort of getting really popular with people in France and Japan. Apparently, it's like, I guess, who knew that there were so many conspiratards in fucking Japan? I guess, I don't know. I should probably not use that word conspiratard. That's probably wrong. I apologize. I won't say that anymore. But still, it's like, fucking, it's frustrating. It's frustrating because you can see this shit developing in real time. You know. And the reason why it's frustrating is because it's essentially just a rebranding of, like, white supremacism, of Nazism. I don't know. So, more failed Q predictions, right? Of course, the very first Q post ever, we spoke briefly about this, was about how, Hillary Clinton would be arrested. Of course, that didn't happen. Another one was that there was a video of Hillary Clinton and Huma Abedin dancing around naked, wearing a child's face that they skinned off as a mask, engaging in a satanic ritual. And this video was supposedly on Hunter Biden's laptop. See, it's funny how all of this shit just sort of, it all just folds together, isn't it? It's funny how, like, because the supposedly this video of Hillary and Huma Abedin, that part of the conspiracy started in like 2017, and then suddenly, Hunter Biden sort of comes into play right around the 2020 election, and it's like, oh yeah, he had this video on his laptop. That's why it's such a big deal. Like, it's just funny how fast this shit adapts. You know what I mean? How fast these rumors spread and how fast they adapt to envelop any sort of any like story that's currently in the news gets enveloped into it. That's some funny shit. More failed QAnon predictions. They said John McCain would retire from the Senate. He didn't. He stayed in the Senate until the day he died. Other ones was that the CEO of Twitter, Jack Dorsey, would resign. He did not. Or also that Mark Zuckerberg would resign from Facebook. He did not. The reason why those became part of QAnon, of course, is because Twitter and Facebook would often criticize Donald Trump. Especially Twitter. I mean, they even kicked Trump from Twitter eventually. And so, of course, since they don't like Trump, that must mean that they're part of the, Satan worshipping pedophile elite cabal now. Even though Twitter is probably the reason why fucking Trump got elected in the first place, because he was able to use their platform to reach out to people directly. And, one of the reasons, I don't want to say the reason, but I think everybody can agree that Twitter definitely contributed to Donald Trump's media machine in a significant way, and probably had a hand in him winning the election in 2016. So even though they helped his ass, the fact that they finally fucking banned him after his goons tried to take over the fucking country and he wouldn't shut up about it, that must mean that they've been co-opted by Satan. It can't just be the fact that they're sick of Donald Trump's shit and they don't want to be affiliated with a fucking fascist anymore. Nope, gotta be Satan. Anyway, that's funny shit. Of course, the biggest failed prediction from QAnon is the prediction that Donald Trump would remain president even after he lost the election, that he would become inaugurated again on January 20th of 2021. Right? That didn't happen. I don't know why they said the 20th. I mean, inauguration day is the 21st, but whatever. Of course, then after that didn't come true. The goalpost got moved to March 4th of 2021. That didn't happen. Hand hurts. I gotta take a break for a second here. The whole thing with March 4th, of course, was another conspiracy theory, right? Stemming from the District of Columbia Organic Act of 1871, which supposedly made the United States into a corporation, right? This comes from the sovereign citizen movement, which I'm thinking of just doing a live stream all about those guys, because sovereign citizenship, that whole thing, those guys are fucking fascinating. Those are the guys that ride around with the, ride around with the license plates that say exempt, right? Or they'll say something like, legal traveler or whatever. They're people that they believe that the United States, the laws of the United States don't apply to them, and that when you go to court, if the flag has a fucking fringe on the end, then that means it's a maritime flag, and so maritime law really applies. And, and then they also believe that the government has things like straw contracts, and that the government, when you're born, and they keep a bank account for every person with millions of dollars in it, and if you just know the super secret Konami code, you can like access this money and shit like that. It's a never-ending rabbit hole of bizarre wackiness that is hilarious and also disturbing at the same time that people actually believe this horse shit. So yeah, maybe next week, maybe we'll do sovereign citizens next week. That'd be funny. Anyway, so the idea was that Donald Trump would like every president since then was president of the corporation. And Donald Trump would actually be the president of the nation, so he'd only be the 19th president instead of the 45th, right? Of course, that is bullshit. And also the inauguration day used to be on March 4th, way back in the day, and that was mainly because it would often take people weeks and weeks and weeks to travel around the country. Back in the day when there was traveling by stagecoach and shit. Right. So yeah, of course, March 4th comes and goes, and Donald Trump is not inaugurated. That date has now been moved out again to sometime in August, August 21st, maybe. So that's another thing QAnon's saying. You're hearing that a lot from the My Pillow guy, Mike Lindell, saying that Donald Trump is going to be reinaugurated again in August of 2021. Kind of reminds me a lot of, it reminds me a lot of? It reminds me a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses, right? If anybody right now watching this or in the chat is Jehovah's Witness, I apologize in advance, because I'm about to talk shit about Jehovah's Witnesses, right? Now, this has nothing to do with them as a people. I mean, I've actually known quite a few Jehovah's Witnesses in the past. They're great people. But, they keep making predictions about the end of the world that just don't come true. So Jehovah's Witnesses supposedly first predicted that the rapture would happen back in I think it was 1917 is when it was going to happen. And then when World War I started, they saw that as a sign, like, see, we're correct, whatever. But then 1917 comes and goes, and then no rapture. Then that date got moved up again. I think even before that, it was there was already a date that came and went in the 1870s at some point. I can't remember what that was. Anyway, that date gets moved up again to 1976, or 78, right around there, in the 70s, late 70s. And of course, the late 70s comes and goes, and, disco, Star Wars, all that shit, blah, blah, blah. And world doesn't end again. So now it's just sort of been pushed off to some vague point in the future, right? And think about that. It's right, okay, it's 1917. Your prediction fails, so you got to make a new prediction. So they make it for 1976, I think, right? So they make it for 60 years in the future. Why do you make it so far in the future? How come not next year, right? Think about that. Why? It's because everyone who was alive at that time will be dead by the time your next prediction comes. And that's why they did it, right? Because that's what fucking scam artists do. That's what, that's what grifters and scam artists and shit like that do. It has to be unfalsifiable, right? you make claims that are unfalsifiable so people will fucking believe it. Because if it's a claim that you can test, people will test it and then they'll realize that you're full of shit. And that's something that you get from religions all the fucking time. Mormons do the same goddamn thing. You know, Joseph Smith has his golden plates, but you can only see him in this hat. But only he's allowed to look at him, so he can look at it in the hat, and he's going to dictate to somebody else, you know, what they say and shit. Right? And, you know, it's stuff like that. It's like, well, you have them in front of you, just let me see the fucking plates. No, God doesn't want to let me see it. Well, then fuck you, okay? Like, do the plates exist or do they not? Yes, no. Can we look at them? Can we not look at them? Oh, only you're allowed to look at them. In a hat. The dumbest shit ever. Seriously. And I'm sorry if anybody out there is a Mormon. I don't mean to insult you or your religion, but I am insulting your religion. I'm not going to take that back. All right, sorry. Your religion is fucking stupid. Anyway, yeah. Where was I going with this? Yeah, okay. So yeah, it just reminds me a lot of that. This idea that they're pushing the date back, and you know that's actually kind of a, you know, that's kind of a sign that QAnon has made it and has officially become a religion. The fact that they put out failed predictions, and even though they fail, people still believe them. You know what I mean? That's a good sign that it's become an article of faith among its believers, right? So, I've said a couple of times in this stream that QAnon, you know, it's basically just white supremacism. It's Nazism, right? Because, you know, if you look at the core claims, that's really the exact same shit that anti-Semites and Nazis and white supremacists and shit have been saying about Jewish people for hundreds and hundreds of years. You know, the idea of a Jewish cabal of business owners and bankers that run everything. That idea is not new. That's something that, you know, we've seen going back at least 200 years. You know, it started with the Illuminati conspiracy, which is something that, you know, we could do a whole live stream itself on that, right? You know, and that was, you know, essentially it was a conspiracy theory that was developed in the late 18th century, you know, and was quickly debunked, you know, about Freemasons conspiring to control the governments of the world and stuff like that, right? That idea got recycled again into a pamphlet called the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion, right? Which is basically taking the Illuminati conspiracy theory and blaming it on Jews. That's what that is, right? And it was a pamphlet that was written around the early 20th century. It was spread around, you know, they're not exactly sure who wrote it, but they think it was, let's see, do I have that written down here? They think it was a guy named Matthew Glodvinsky, who was a operative of they're called the Okhrana, right? Which was basically the Russian secret police for the Tsar back in the, you know, before the, you know, Soviet Union, right? So they think it was that guy that wrote it, but there's, you know, there's also some evidence that maybe it predates him, so maybe he just sort of like, you know, wrote he's not the one that came up with this, but just he's the first guy to like write it down and put, you know, apparently, right? And, you know, the protocols, you know, they talk about Jewish bankers and how they want to control, you know, governments and how they want to control the media and a step-by-step thing of how to take over the world and blah, 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 you know. And it was spread around by some pretty powerful and important people. Most notably, Henry Ford really bit into this a lot, and he published it in his newspaper. You know, Henry Ford apparently had a newspaper. I didn't know that prior to researching this. That's some crazy shit, right? And another most notable world leader that believed in the protocols of the Elders of Zion was Adolf Hitler. And you see mention of it in Mein Kampf, right? Um, Mein Kampf is also the source of the meme that Jewish people were behind communism as well as international banking, right? Which is I always thought that was a little bit of a, I always thought that was a little bit of a contradiction there. It's like, oh, they're behind the force of people that want to free people from, they're behind the philosophy that wants to free people from, rule by the bourgeois, right? But at the same time, they're also behind international banking. That doesn't really make a lot of sense, you know. I read something that particular bit got spread around after the Russians, like after the Americans and the British backed Russia in World War II. I read that's how that got spread around, right? From basically the Nazis. It was the idea was like, oh well, how come they're backing Russia? How come these two colonialist powers, are backing Russia instead of us? It must be because it must be because the evil Jews got in there somehow and are controlling them. The Jewish bankers must be controlling America and Britain. That was the rationale behind that. So whenever you hear that, whenever you hear Marjorie Taylor Greene or something, or Alex Jones or whatever, talking about the international banking conspiracy, the bankers, the Illuminati that are running everything, blah, 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 blah. Just remember where that shit came from. That came from Mein Kampf, right? Remember the origin, and it makes it easier if you to know the origin of these tropes. Makes it easier to identify the motives of the people who spread them around. You know what I mean? And that's the thing, is that a lot of people out there probably aren't even aware of this stuff. Like, Marjorie Taylor Greene probably has no idea that when she talks about the Illuminati, she's repeating shit that Adolf Hitler wrote about. She probably has no clue about this because she's not intelligent enough, right, to put that together. She hasn't bothered to do any of the research. It's probably just some shit that somebody told her, or that she read on some website somewhere. And she's not, smart enough or inclined enough to actually bother researching any of it. So she just repeats this stuff, thinking that she has the super secret info, which is going to like save America from the commies or whatnot. That's something you got to remember. A lot of these people probably don't even fucking know. They think that what they're doing is the right thing when they spread this shit around. And it's like, no, man. They need to be educated, and they need to be confronted with the truth. And it has to be done in such a way over and over and over again, because if you just say it once, it's not going to sink in. It has to. You have to expose people to counter arguments repeatedly, constantly. And first off, people have to be open to counter arguments. That's one thing, right? If you're just not open to it, then no matter what you say to them, it's never going to take hold. But if someone's arguing with you, chances are they're open to the counter argument, or else they wouldn't be arguing with you. That's something you got to keep in mind too. So it's like, it's worth it sometimes. It's worth it to argue with people when it comes to shit like this. It's worth it to, and however you want to do that is up to you. Whether you want to be snarky about it, or whether you want to genuinely try to reach out to someone, whatever, both of those have their place, I think, right? But the important thing is engaging. Because if you never fucking engage, if you never present that counter narrative to people, then they'll never be exposed to it. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, the very least that we should do is expose them to the counter narrative, whether they take it on or not, or whether it works, or whether they want to actually know the truth about the things they believe is something else. But I think it's kind of like a moral obligation at this point for me to have a counter. There at least has to be a counter narrative available. Because you see a lot of people on the left kind of just not engaging and kind of going with that, like, they'd rather like cancel people or kick them out kick them out of their space. I'd rather kick them off Twitter, kick them off YouTube, shit like that, rather than trying to engage with a counter narrative. And I think it's very important that we engage. You know. Anyway, getting back to the talk here. Kind of went off on another tangent. Sorry. Let's see. So yeah, getting back to this particular bit of the anti-Semitism, the protocols of the Elders of Zion, this is definitely something that you see lots of QAnon people tweeting out in support of stuff like that. One notable person is Mary Ann Mendoza, who was affiliated with a group called Women for Trump, which was kind of like a not really a PAC, but they would raise money and donate it to PACs, stuff like that. And she was scheduled to speak at the 2020 Republican National Convention. And then news came out about tweets of hers where she was spreading around the protocols of the Elders of Zion, and she got kicked from that. So it's like, you think this stuff is all just weird fringe, like fringe Nazis and like fucking those types of people believe in this shit. It's like, no. People like mainstream conservatives and stuff are very much like, involved with these conspiracy theories. And it is important for us to expose that kind of thing as much as possible. So, something to keep in mind. It's like, just because, don't think that it's only the crazies that believe this shit. That it's only like, the nutbags with the fucking like, Nazi tattoos running around like, wearing fucking khakis and boogaloo t-shirts and boogaloo fucking Hawaiian shirts and shit like that. It's not just those guys that are spreading this shit. It's like fucking mainstream thinkers and politicians. Right? Seriously. Let's see. Another one. What time we got? We're at a little past an hour. So another big part of this, of course, is what's called blood libel, right? And this is where the baby raping, blood drinking, spirit cooking thing comes from, right? This has been a charge which has been, like, if you know what blood libel is, it's basically the idea that Jewish people kidnap children and sacrifice them in rituals, and use their blood to in rituals and things to bake their Passover matzo and that kind of thing, right? Which, if you know anything about food, you know that there's no blood in matzo. I don't know how that shit happens. That doesn't make any fucking sense. But anyway, human beings would not be considered kosher anyhow. But yeah. So this has kind of been a charge that has been laid on Jewish people for centuries, right? Literally centuries, going back, 1,000 years. This idea that Jewish people kidnap children and stuff. And what's really funny about this, right, is that this is actually a charge that Romans would make against early Christians, 2,000 years ago, that they were kidnapping children and, like, that they were cannibals. Of course, that comes from the Eucharist, right? When the Catholics have that little cracker that they eat, right? That's where that, and this is the flesh of my flesh, blah, blah, blah. That's the whole idea where, like, Christians are cannibals. They're actually consuming their, consuming human body parts or whatever. That's a misrepresentation of that, obviously. Right. So, yeah, but it's just funny how, like, the more things change, the more they stay the same, right? Christianity emerges from the Roman Empire. One of the things that Romans accuse Christians of is kidnapping children and, using their blood in rituals and stuff and raping them and that kind of thing. And then, a couple hundred years later, when the Christians are in charge, they're saying the same shit about Jewish people. Funny how that works, right? So, yeah, people actually still kind of believe this shit, especially in a lot of Muslim countries around there, like, Afghanistan and like fucking Iran and stuff like that. Like, the more fundamentalist the country, the more likely you'll see references to blood libel. You know, except now instead of kidnapping Christian children, they're kidnapping Muslim children, that kind of thing. So the first recorded instance of blood libel was actually from the year 1144. That's how far back this shit goes, right? And there was a child, a 12-year-old kid named William of Norwich in England, right? And his dead body is found in the woods slightly outside of town. And basically, there was a community of Jewish people that lived nearby, and they got blamed for William's death, right? And this sort of, kind of went under. You know, there was like people that went to go lynch them, stuff like that. There was some violence, that kind of thing. And then what it was is that a local priest wrote a book called The Life and Miracles of William Norwich. And the idea was that they wanted to get him canonized into a saint, which it never actually happened. But there's still references to people calling him Saint William of Norwich, right afterwards. So, you know, this kind of led to several other incidents around. Another notable one was 81 years later in 1255. There was another boy named Hugh who was found drowned in a well. And basically a Jewish person found him in this well, right? And the Jewish guy's name was Jopin or Kopin, something like that. And of course, since he found the kid in the well, he gets blamed for killing the kid. And he gets arrested and he gets tortured. And he names several other prominent Jewish people in his community as accomplices, right? Of course, you know, when you're being tortured, you know, when you're put on the rack, getting your fucking thumbs crushed and, put on the hot seat, whatever they call that. There was that chair where they put hot coals under the chair and it burns your ass, you know, that kind of thing. They're putting fucking nails under your fucking fingernails, shit like that. When they're torturing you like crazy, you'll say anything to stop the torture, right? So this guy, Kopin, basically names other people in order to get them to stop fucking torturing him. And of course they give him clemency because if you, according to medieval law like that, if you actually admit guilt and ask for forgiveness, then they forgive you. So he gets clemency, right? And a bunch of other people get caught and tortured and imprisoned, right? So the way it worked in medieval England was that the king was, under English law, the king could claim all Jewish people as his property, right? And that meant that he could tax them at a higher rate than he could normal English people, like other non-Jews, right? Which is, if you ever needed an argument against monarchy, there it is. The idea that you are actually, a person can be owned by the king, right? Just like, that in and of itself is like a good reason to say fuck monarchy. Anyway. So the king at that time, what it was is that he sold his rights to the Jewish people of England to his cousin, or was it? No, sorry, it was his brother-in-law, right? And the Richard Earl of Cromwell is who was his younger brother. Sorry, the king at that time sells his rights to own the Jewish people in England to his younger brother, right? But he still had the, ability to claim the property of any Jewish person who was accused of a felony. So he hears about this, the king, shows up at this town, he revokes the clemency for this guy Kopin, right? Ties him to a horse, drags him around the town, right? Until the guy is presumably dies, and then he hangs him afterwards. And then he steals all his property, right? And then another roughly 100 other Jewish people were also hung and executed and the ones who weren't executed were dragged off to the Tower of London, simply for the fact that they were Jews, and they were accused of, they were accused of a felony. Doesn't mean that they were guilty of a felony. And the king stole all their property. You know, that's how freedom worked in medieval England. So all these people crying over Prince Philip or whatever, who fucking just died recently, that's what you're fucking crying for. That's what monarchy did to people in England. I mean, I know this was 1,000 years ago, but still. Fuck monarchy. Anyway, so after all this shit happens, the brother of the king here, who actually owned all of the Jews under English medieval law, decides to give them all, to pardon all of them, so that his maniac brother, the king, will stop going around and killing them and stealing their fucking property. Right. And that's just an example of, when people talk about how Jewish people were, like, persecuted and all that, yeah, they really fucking were. They really were. Imagine that shit. Imagine you wake up tomorrow and, the police are there to arrest you and escort you over to be hanged, and someone's going to steal everything you own, simply the fact of your religion. That's what people had to fucking live with, And you read this shit in history books, and you don't think about the actual human cost of that. I mean, seriously, man, it's fucking crazy. Anyhow, this all leads to, by 1290, this sort of, like, persecution of Jewish people. They were essentially expelled from the country in the year 1290. And there wasn't another community of Jews allowed to be, founded in England until 350 years later. 1656 is when the next group of Jewish people were allowed to live in England. Okay, so yeah, that's the history of fucking blood libel. All right, not some pleasant stuff here. Okay, and people still believe this shit today. Some notable examples of blood libel in recent history. 1946, there was what's called the Kalisy pogrom in Poland. So a pogrom is basically when people flip out and go on a murderous rampage, essentially a riot that is targeting a specific group of people. That's a pogrom, So something like say, in 1921, the Brooks, what was it, Green Street riot, I think is what it's called, in Oklahoma, where a bunch of white people went crazy and just went on a kill crazy murder spree and killed all the black people in Oklahoma, in Tulsa, right? That's some real shit. Like, there were planes flying around dropping firebombs on buildings and people getting sniped and all this other crap. That all started because a guy got arrested for, I think what it was, a guy got arrested for, like, insulting a white woman, like a 17-year-old white woman, and, or assaulting, not insulting, assaulting a 17-year-old white woman, and then they were afraid that this guy was going to get lynched, and some black people showed up at the sheriff's office with guns armed to prevent this guy from getting lynched, and then people took that as, like, the black people are rising up, and it became this fucking, like, huge race war. And it's fascinating in and of itself to read about it. If you ever seen that show Watchmen on the TV show Watchmen on Amazon Prime, the first episode starts with this massacre in Oklahoma. It's one of the hidden bits of history in America that nobody talks about. This should be a thing that everybody should learn in high school history. And it's like, you have to fucking, like, learn it from a goddamn TV show. Right? Because we don't talk about, in the United States, we don't talk about, how really unfair and, like, racially fucking, like, motivated people were in the past. We don't learn about that shit in our history books. We really should. Anyway. So, yeah, anyway, getting back to the Kalisy pogrom, I totally went off on another tangent there, sorry. The Kalisy pogrom in Poland in 1946. This is 1 year after World War II, had ended. right? And it started on a rumor that a boy was kidnapped by Jews, and which later turned out to be bullshit because the boy was not kidnapped by Jews, right? And this riot starts, and 42 Jewish people end up getting killed. And this is really kind of messed up because this is, right after World War II, and a lot of these people who were killed happen to be Holocaust survivors. That's really fucked up. 2009, there was a group of 42 people that were indicted for money laundering in New York City. And among them were 5 rabbis, right? So, of course, rumors and conspiracy theories spread on social media and on the internet at that time. There were, at that time, 2009, you had like you had like fucking MySpace, shit like that. But on like white supremacist websites and on social media, that spread around that these guys were actually being indicted for human trafficking and selling body parts, and not just normal, money laundering like everybody else. It's like, no, since they're Jewish, they can't just be like guilty of normal money laundering crime, right? They have to add on this horse shit about like them selling fucking baby parts or whatever, That's another thing too. The conspiracy that Planned Parenthood was selling baby parts has a little bit some similarities to do with blood libel. Another mention of blood libel in recent history came from 2011 when Sarah Palin, in an interview, said blood libel. She compared the criticism of conservatives who were unwilling to accept gun control to blood libel, right? This was actually kind of, if you remember, this was right after Gabrielle Giffords got shot in the head, right around that time. And it was the discussion came up of gun control because a fucking House rep someone tried to assassinate a House rep, right? The person that shot Gabrielle Giffords was also into conspiracy theories too, just as a side note. QAnon didn't exist back then, but he was very much one of the Alex Jones breed of Sandy Hook denialist type conspiracy theorists, that guy. Anyway, yeah, so the discussion came up about, gun control because, fucking senator just got shot in the fucking head. And Sarah Palin goes on the news and then is saying, we won't be held, responsible for this blood libel or whatever. And that causes a major fucking thing. And it's like, maybe a poor choice of words there, Sarah Palin, because, Gabrielle Giffords is Jewish. Maybe you should have fucking thought about that before you opened your mouth, you dumb bitch. But whatever. Kind of just goes to show, it's like anti-Semitism comes in all flavors. Right. So anyway, yeah, this shit is very much still around, and so you'd think that QAnon would start fading away, but doesn't really seem to be fading away. Seems to be, the people that are believing in it, they're doubling down, right? And it's starting to get a little scary. You're starting to see politicians getting elected, people like Lauren Boebert and, Marjorie Taylor Greene and all that, who have retweeted and reposted QAnon conspiracy theories. And it's not only just them, but even, throughout the whole election last year, Donald Trump would just repeatedly retweet QAnon conspiracy theories over and over and over. He'd retweet QAnon, like, QAnon influencers, like, constantly. All they would have to do is say something positive about Donald Trump, and he wouldn't look to see where it came from. And it's like, he's fucking retweeting this fucking wacky Nazi fucking conspiracy theory horse shit, And it got really far, it even, people like Michael Flynn, he was part of Trump's inner circle. Michael Flynn, there's a video of him with a bunch of his friends, and they're repeating the congressional oath. And at the end of the video, he tacks onto the congressional oath the QAnon. There's a saying. It goes, where we go one, we go all. Michael Flynn fucking like tacks that on to the end of the congressional oath there in his fucking video. It's like, I mean, that's the biggest, clearest dog whistle. It's not even a dog whistle. It's a fucking like, bullhorn, a dog bullhorn in your face, screaming it, right? The Republican Party of Texas changed their motto to "We are the storm." I mean, fucking unbelievable, And you remember, this is mainstream shit. I mean, that's the Republican Party of fucking Texas embracing QAnon right there, right? Embracing this anti-Semitic Nazi horse shit. That's when you got to get scared, right? That's when it's scary, when it's not just some insane nutbag on YouTube screaming into his fucking screaming into his cell phone about Jewish space lasers or whatever, right? When you actually see like the establishment of a major political party, start to fucking like repeat this stuff, to embrace this stuff, I mean, holy fucking shit. So yeah, it's and we really do, getting back to what I was talking about earlier, I think the only people that's going to stop it is us. We're the only ones that can stop it. And we can't, the thing is, we can stop it. All right? Because the internet is where religions go to die. Right? So QAnon becomes a religion, right? That's when it's like, this is the time. We can end it, How do you end a religion? How do you end QAnon, right? Through constant debate. Right. The same reason why people leave Christianity is why they'll eventually leave QAnon, Right now, it's like the largest growing segment of any religion ever is none. Right? Because we live in an age where people can research things. And so people research their religion. People research Christianity. People research Hinduism and Islam. And they look at all the contradictions, and they look at all the controversies and all the ridiculous things these people say and support, and then suddenly church numbers start going down, and we have to do the same thing to QAnon. We have to treat QAnon the same way we treat fundamentalist Christians who are trying to teach evolution in the schools. We need to stand against these people and debate them, right? And what'll happen is that eventually it'll become uncool to believe in this stuff, and that's when it'll die. That's when it'll die, right? It'll become like, it'll sort of hit this point where it's like some shit that like only fucking stupid people believe in. And then QAnon will disappear, and it'll just become, it'll slowly sort of fade out, and I think we should really do everything we can to kind of hasten that along. Because this has already led to violence, QAnon, already written. We have the most famous example is the January 6th Capitol riot, insurrection. That's the most famous example of QAnon violence. But there's been a lot others, of people that you don't even hear about getting arrested with bomb making materials and stuff like that. That kind of thing. So it's like, there was a report that came out in what was it? 2019, so almost 3 years ago now, that had a bunch of examples, and a lot of examples of people who have been arrested, right? For like basically attempted, arrested for like terrorism, bomb making, shit like that. A lot of things that, and they were all linked to QAnon, and it was a lot of stuff that even has not been very publicized very far. I'll put a link to I don't have a link to it, but I'll put a link down in the thing. It was an FBI report. And it's kind of scary shit to know that, that's the thing. It's that people will motivated by these ridiculous conspiracy theories, they'll go out and they'll do shit like fucking go into the Comet Pizza with a gun and demand to see the basement, stuff like that. It's like you get a combination of mentally unstable people, right, who believe in fringe conspiracy theories, right, who have a conservative mindset anyway, so they don't really give a shit about people anyway. Right? They're not adverse to using violence to get what they want in the first place. You know, couple that with a year-long lockdown due to coronavirus, right? Which makes people even more mentally unstable. And it's like, it's only, you know, it only makes sense now that we're seeing a rise in mass shootings right now, for example, right? I mean, all of these factors put together have kind of like driven a lot of people over the fucking edge, right? And this hateful rhetoric that you get from QAnon is just going to make it worse. So, you know, anyway, that was, thought a nice little stream on QAnon. I've gone through all of my material. Got about 20 minutes here. Let's take a break and look at what we've drawn. Yeah, it looks okay. You think? It's got kind of a weird sort of watermelon-looking head. My hand hurts. So let's read some of the comments here from you guys from a little bit. Let's see. Thanks for joining, Dynacat and Lewis the Hedgehog. Let me see what we got here. Dynacat. Hal Halbrook played Deep Throat, and that was wrong for the part. Just the Facts Man was Jack Webb. Let's see. I never respected Oliver Stone after that, after JFK. Didn't like JFK, huh? You know, I did. But the thing is, the first time I saw the JFK movie from Oliver Stone, I mean, I think I was like 16 when I saw it, so I was very young and impressionable. And, you know, for that actually, because I've kind of talked about before in the past how I was deeply into conspiracy theories as a younger person. That movie was, excuse me, that movie was a big part of that. You know what I mean? It hit me at just the right time when I was very, very impressionable. And, you know, right around when you're a teenager, when you first sort of learn that everything that you've been taught is a lie, right? Like, that's like right around that age where you start realizing that the shit you see on the news and stuff is not always the truth, and that kind of thing, and you know, people that you vote for and stuff like that aren't always trustworthy, and you know, you can't really trust the police, shit like that. You know, like right around that age is when that movie hit. And I watched it, and yeah, it influenced me a lot. And, you know, and the thing is, I'm not afraid to say, like, for you know, a good 10 years after that, I was deeply into this shit. And that movie was really something that influenced me like that. And, you know, as the years have gone on, I've kind of come to an understanding of what conspiracy theories really are about. You know, it's all about entertainment and making money. That's what conspiracy theories are about. You know. But, I've also come to understand, you know, the JFK conspiracy is not as deep or, you know, mysterious as that movie makes it seem. Right? Once you read about the stuff and you actually get some of the truth about some of it, it's like, it's starting to look like Oswald did it. You know what I mean? Like, there was a video I saw a little while ago where they used computer modeling taken from the Zapruder film that kind of clinched it for me. It actually does look like 3 shots caused all of those wounds. Right? It actually does look like that. It actually does start to fit. And even though, yeah, maybe there is some more evidence still of other people being there, other shooters. You know, for example, the guy on the grassy knoll. There's a photograph, a very blurry photograph of a guy on the grassy knoll firing. And there might have been other people still involved. It's like, at this point, it's sort of like you have to come up with some more evidence. You know what I mean? The evidence that's there is not convincing to me anymore. You know, and even if there were other shooters, it sort of looks to me like, yeah, Oswald might have done it. I don't know. There are still a couple of things, like for example, the photo of the bagman. You know, that leaves a little bit of mystery to it. You know, there's another photo I'm not so sure about that was found, which may have implied that the famous picture of Oswald holding the holding the rifle on Time magazine, like that picture might be fake. You know, like there was a basically a mat. They found a photo mat in the Dallas police force, which they're not sure about that, but that in and of itself doesn't prove that the photo's fake. So it's like, I don't know. But in recent years, I've kind of started to abandon that whole thing. It's starting to look to me like Oswald actually did it. So, you know. But yeah, that's the thing though, is like I really, you know, I have to admit that movie really did have a big impression on me, and it really led me in a direction where, you know, I kind of immersed myself in conspiracy theories for a good decade. And, you know, that's the thing, is that, you know, one thing leads to another. So you start with JFK, and then, you know, then you read about fucking Roswell, and then you read about, like, you know, and then before you know it, you're reading shit like the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, and you're like, the fuck is this? Like, and that's kind of like, you know, I think what kind of got me out of it is I started to realize that it actually was very, you know, like, I started to see patterns like that, lots of anti-Semitism in it, lots of racism, you know, in conspiracy theory, and just in the, not only just in the theories themselves, but in the people that believed them, you know. I would go to websites and stuff where I would want to talk about conspiracy theories, and then people would be talking about white genocide, you know. And I'd be like, the fuck is this? I wanted to talk about Roswell aliens, you know what I mean? Like, so, you know, and that's when I started, you know, and I was maybe in my, you know, mid-20s at this point, you know, 25, 26, and right around then I started realizing, like, yeah, maybe these guys are starting to have motives that aren't exactly kosher, you know, like, they're, you know, and then right around that time it was really before Facebook hit, before social media was a big thing, you know. This is like maybe, I think I was 25 in like 2001, you know. And, you know, white supremacism on the internet was very much confined to certain spaces, you know, Stormfront, shit like that. Every forum that you would see that allowed, that was unmoderated, these people would come and take it over. You know, Nazis and white supremacists and Holocaust deniers and shit like that would come and take over forums if you didn't moderate it good enough. You know, and a good sign that a website or a forum or something was going away was when all these people would come and take over. That basically meant it only had a few months left to live, right? And I saw that I saw that over and over and over. You know, there used to be one that I would go to called Argue with Everyone, which was actually really fun. You know, I would go there and debate people, shit like that. That one got shut down. Another one I went to was scam.com. I think scam.com is back, but it got shut down. It got overrun with fucking Nazis. It was just it was a pattern that you saw just constantly over and over and over. And that's what's really funny, is like now I see, like, you know, this person tells me, like, getting back to what I was talking about earlier in the stream about fucking Club Penguin. It's like, okay, now this Club Penguin fucking website is overrun with Nazis. It's because they don't have moderation. It's funny how this shit still happens, you know. And it really was like social media that really, it wasn't until social media came along that all this shit really exploded. And like white supremacists and stuff found an outlet where they could spread their horse shit. And they could get normal, ordinary people to do it. They can get the normies to do it. They can get, you know, suburban soccer moms to spread their shit around for them. And that's why you're seeing stuff like QAnon, you know. So they're basically, QAnon is just a way of sanitizing white supremacism. That's basically it, you know, removing all of the references to you know, Jews and shit like that, right, and cloaking it in different language, saying, oh, they're international bankers, oh, they're a cabal of Satan worshippers, etc., etc., etc. And then that gets fucking like John Q, you know, John Q soccer mom to like fucking spread their fucking propaganda for them, and you know, opens, and what it does, it opens the door to them, and then now they can go in there, they can go into QAnon related sites and Facebook groups and things like that, and they can approach people with the hardcore stuff, and it's like, well, if you'll believe that a you know, cabal of blood drinking baby kidnapping Satan worshippers are fucking running everything, then you might be open to Holocaust denial too. You know, it's very much a gateway conspiracy, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Anyhow, let's read some more shit. I have my let's see. Dynacat loves me. I have my doubts about Russia and QAnon. It's very predictably likely to take hold in Russia, and it has them doing them as much damage as anyone else. Yeah. I wouldn't doubt. See, I don't think that QAnon, because that's a theory. That's a theory that QAnon was started by Russian intelligence. I don't think that has anything to reality. No. It is pretty much, you know, I think it's pretty much been proven beyond a reasonable doubt that there are Russian troll farms, and they have, for example, interfered in our election in so much that they spread fake news and, you know, that kind of thing, you know? Like, basically Russian troll bots that go off and they amplify certain messages, that kind of thing. They spread fake news, they spread dissension, they spread racial hatred, shit like that. That's definitely a thing that's happening. You know. Did they start QAnon? No, but I bet, you know, I wouldn't doubt that they're amplifying QAnon, you know, to some degree, because it helps to spread chaos in the United States, right? I mean, it would be irresponsible of them not to, you know, if that was your job, was to spread, you know, to spread dissension and chaos and social strife within a society, it would be, you know, QAnon is the perfect opportunity to do it. So I wouldn't doubt that there are troll farms out there that are actually spreading shit. Whether they're coming up with the shit, though, I don't think so. I don't think they came up with it. I don't think they're posting ASQ, you know. Maybe, but I highly doubt that. I mean, actually, it looks like this guy, fucking Ron Watkins, is at least one of the people that was posing as Q. So, you know, like, are the Russians paying Ron Watkins to pose as Q? Probably, you know, no. I highly doubt it. I think Ron Watkins just did it because he gets off on it. You know, he gets off on the fucking, on the trolling. It's like the most masterful troll ever. You know, if you think about it, QAnon is the biggest troll of all time. I think that is one of the motivations, you know. And then the other one is probably money, because it got traffic to go to fucking 8chan, and that's his website. And so it's like, you know, millions and millions of people were going to his site every fucking month. You know, that translates into dollars for these guys. Let's see, Danny Cat. Then again, Russia spread a lot of COVID misinformation, and that hurt them at home pretty bad, so maybe they are also dumb enough to spread QAnon shit too. Yeah. I think, you know, I was talking to my mom about this, actually. It's funny. So there's 3 million deaths from worldwide from the Rona, right? And about 600,000 of those are reported from the United States. Okay. This tells me that the number of deaths are probably way higher than what that actually is, right? You know, I think it's pretty safe to say that Russia lied about the number of people that died from COVID, right? Pretty sure that was, you know, China for sure. China for sure has not, you know, given us accurate numbers, right? And I think a lot of just other places in the world just don't have accurate counts because they don't have the infrastructure to keep count. You know, places in Africa. Brazil for sure. Brazil, it's way higher. You got to remember, you know, Brazil is run by, you know, Bolsonaro. He's essentially a Trump-like figure, you know. And it's like, you notice that countries that were run by authoritarians like Donald Trump, like Putin, like fucking Bolsonaro, like, you know, the guy in the Philippines, Duarte, right? Those are the countries that have really high COVID deaths, right? And, well, it only, you know, it would be to their PR advantage to reduce the number of deaths from COVID, right? So the fact that, we're probably not getting accurate numbers from any of those countries, Brazil, the Philippines, right? And then, so we're probably, they're probably giving us inaccurate numbers just on purpose because it makes them look bad, to have a large death count, right? Especially places, and then also places like, say, India, right? India has, like, what, 800 million people, something like that? It's ridiculous. They almost have 1 billion people there. It's probably a logistical nightmare, and they don't have, accurate counts there anyway. You know what I mean? So, and even in the United States, there are places where we're not getting accurate counts. Florida, for example, we know the count from Florida is not accurate. There was a whistleblower. What's her name? I can't remember her name exactly, but that whistleblower lady who basically said, yeah, they asked me to lie about infection rates. And then, so then she quits, and then she takes the data, the publicly available data, and sets up her own website in order to report the data, the actual real rates, the real infection rate and the death rate. And then the fucking state government in Florida, sends like the fucking, sends the fucking cops over, and they like break down her door and steal all of her computers and shit, right? Because, the governor of Florida wanted to like kiss Trump's ass, and then by keeping his COVID numbers down because he wanted Donald Trump to look good. So it's like we know that Florida at least is not reporting accurate COVID numbers, and it's like how many other states aren't, right? And how many other states, like how many other deaths, like have people died from COVID related stuff and it just hasn't been counted as COVID because they weren't in a hospital when they died, for example, right? Or they died of a heart attack while they had COVID, so they count that as heart attack and not COVID related. We know that, so chances are it's probably closer to 6 million people have died from this, right? Around the world, you know what I mean? That's really that's the scary fucking shit, is that, chances are it's like an order of magnitude worse than what we've been led to believe. So I think we'll find out eventually. One day, years after this shit's over, people will be able to look back and they'll be able to look at how many people actually died during this period of time, during this last year. And then they'll be able to compare that to how they died the year before, how many died the year before, because usually those numbers don't change very much, even if there's a war or something, And they'll be able to take unattributed deaths, and they'll be able to say, okay, well, the actual death rate was 20% higher, for example, or something, than it was the year before, right? And that's how we'll get a more accurate count of fatalities from COVID. And it's something that we're not going to know until, years until after this shit's passed, so. Anyway, let's see. Lewis the Hedgehog, if there is a link between Judaism and communism, why did the Soviet Union give weapons to the enemies of Israel all throughout the Cold War? It makes no sense. Of course it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense because it's untrue, ridiculous white supremacist horseshit. See, that's the thing, is that conspiracy theories don't have to make sense. They just have to sound good. You know what I mean? They don't. They don't have to make sense at all, The idea, for example, that the United States would fake landing on the moon sounds fucking ridiculous as hell. And if you actually thought about it, it would require, hundreds of thousands of people to be in on it, in order to, hundreds of thousands of people would have to be complicit in this conspiracy. And all of them would have to, not, everybody from NASA to the people that built the fucking rockets, right? To, the astronauts themselves, to the media who were transmitting these images around the fucking world, right? All of those people are involved in this conspiracy theory, right? And are you telling me that, none of them are going to, blow the fucking whistle? Let's just say, let's say 1,000 people were involved in that. Let's say only the people in charge actually knew, right, that the moon landing was fake. None of those people are going to come forward. Let's say it was 500 people. I mean, seriously, this is giving, the best case scenario for an actual faking the moon landing. 500 people actually knew what was happening, right? Out of 500 people, nobody talked over 40 years, right? Are you fucking serious? Star Wars, like, Episode 9 and shit got leaked, like, a year before the fucking movie came out. There were, like, plot leaks for that. Alright? You can't even keep, like, a fucking, like, plot leak. You know what I mean? Like, the last season of Game of Thrones got leaked. Like, before, like, the filming, like, seriously, Marvel fucking, Marvel movies and shit. Like, you can't even keep, like, the plot of a fucking movie secret in this country. How the hell are you supposed to keep, like, the existence of, like, the biggest conspiracy of all time, that, we didn't land on the moon. It was really Stanley Kubrick was the one that filmed it all or whatever. It boggles the mind how many things would have to be true in order for that to, like, how many ridiculous things would have to, like, actually be true in order for that to be reality. You know what I mean? It boggles the mind. It's as silly to me as the Tower of Babel. That's how silly it is when you think about it. It's as silly as me as Noah's Ark, as the Tower of Babel, as Adam and Eve. The idea that that all of humanity is descended from two people, right? Who somehow we didn't somehow had enough genetic material in order to spawn humanity, and we're all not just hideously inbred mutants or whatever at this point. Like, seriously, that's how ridiculous the whole fucking thing is. So it's like, no, it doesn't have to be true. It doesn't have to, like, make any sense at all. It just has to sound good. It has to be something that you could buy a book, about, and it'll have, like, a cool cover with, like, with, like, a burning city on it or some shit. You know what I mean? That's really it. It just has to be something that makes it sound like, the super secret info that you can actually, that I read this book, I saw this YouTube thing, I listened to this podcast, I know what's really going on. It's fucking ridiculous. Anyway, we are at 2 hours. All right. And I think we're at a good stopping point here. So here's where we're at with our deep one. Turning out pretty good. I guess this will be a thing that doesn't go for 17 streams this time, like the old one. I think I'm going to go ahead and end this. Thank you guys for coming. Really appreciate it. Dynacat, Adversary Fandon, hey, thank you for joining, man. Yes, it is a deep one. This is a deep one from Lovecraft. That's what we're doing. Let's see. So I'm going to go ahead and end all of this stuff. But before I do, I got to show you my other things here, my SD shop and my other YouTube channel and all that stuff, So, let me just go ahead and pull all of this crap up. You got to do it, because I notice if I don't say it, then people don't go visit it. And every time I do a stream, people go and visit it, and people buy my stuff, and it's awesome. So, that's why I got to do it. Let's see, what was my last, I got that, UCD videos, okay. So anyway, if you guys like what I do, and you want to support the channel, please consider, buying something. I have a, let me turn on my monitor. This is my SD shop. It is at, well, you know what, I'll just put a link into the chat here. And I sell prints and things like that. Here's the big piece that we did for like 5 live streams. I made a scroll out of that so you can kind of see it. Right. These are coffee stained. I use coffee stuff like that to stain these, and they're about 11 by 17, pretty big. Here's another one. This is another Lovecraft character. Right. Azotos the Blind Idiot God. Each one comes out a little different. They all look a little unique. So it may not look like what you see in the picture. And anyway, so if you like what I do, if you want to support me monetarily, please consider buying something from my SD shop there. If you like my artwork and you want to see more artwork, I have a DeviantArt website. This is where I post, most of my artwork goes here, right? And I have comics and things like that, and I do sculptures and, that kind of thing. Here's a ninja with chainsaw arms. This is something I drew. So anyway, if you want to check me out on the rest of my artwork, please check me out here on DeviantArt. I'll put that down in the thing. Enjoy that. I also have a webcomic. It's called Hwanja.com. Fun for the whole stupid family. It's got ninjas and stuff in it, you know. And I am updating this a lot more. I have another page that'll probably go up probably tonight. So, you know, it's got ninjas and kung fu and, you know, that kind of thing, stuff like that. People firing bullets at each other and etc., etc., etc. Right. So please check me out on Hwanja.com if you want to see my web comic. I'll put that down in the bottom. There you go. And I have another YouTube channel where I talk about movies and video games and toys and stuff. This is UCD videos on YouTube. Latest video, I just did a video about King Kong versus Godzilla. You know, Godzilla versus Kong. Did a movie review of that. It's actually pretty cool. And I do like toy unboxings and like sometimes the occasional video game live stream, that kind of thing, game reviews, etc., etc. So if you want to see non-political content from me, if you want to see me talk about toys and games and shit, please check me out on UCD videos. So let's turn that off. And thanks a lot again, you guys. Thank you, Dynacat. Thank you, Lewis the Hedgehog. Thank you, Adversary Fandon. You guys are great. Good to see you all again. I will be back next week at 11 or probably 11:30 on Saturday, next Saturday. See you there. Same bat time, same bat channel, all that stuff. And it's been great. Talk to you guys next week. Adios.